All right. Well, let's do a podcast. Welcome back to our podcast, Redeemed. I just got back from vacation.
Yeah.
It was kind of a working vacation. We spent a week doing VBS in Arizona, and then I took an extra week and went to Texas.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
It did. I decided at this point it's a good thing I'm a Christian because there's no way I could stand hell.
It is much too hot.
Much too hot.
How hot was it in Texas?
It was quite a bit cooler than Arizona, but the humidity was murder.
Gotcha.
I sweat more in Texas than I have ever sweated.
Never mind. I'll stop.
Anyway, so we're continuing on with our story here with Abraham. We're going to kind of cover quite a bit in a relatively quick fashion.
Lots going on.
Yeah.
There's lots going on, but it also sets the stage for what is to come. Literally. Everything to come. Because the promise that's made to Abraham is going to affect the whole nation of Israel and is basically the birth of the whole nation of Israel. Yeah. Starting with one person.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
Start somewhere. Although it does, I am going to say it kind of starts out on a rocky.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's times where God's thinking, I chose this guy, huh?
Yeah. Or is it just, God's like, just be patient.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Just be patient.
What did I tell you?
I told you this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really that is kind of the overarching theme that just goes through these whole next few chapters is just God's timing is perfect, but sometimes we can get ahead of that.
And when you get ahead of that, there will be repercussions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
As Abram or Abraham.
So after we get out of Egypt, there's some things that happen with Abraham and then his cousin Lot, and we just kind of skipped over that real quick. Basically, they separate. Lot goes one way, Abraham goes the other, because they have so much stuff at that point they can't get along.
Yep.
And so he gives Lot the choice, and of course Lot chooses the good stuff, and they split and they go separate ways. Now, we have the Lord's covenant with Abraham, which is very important at this point. This is where we start the process where God is coming. And this is something else I find interesting, is that throughout this, Abraham will have several conversations with God.
With God.
I mean, and it's amazing to me, God actually talks to Abraham and lays out the plan. I mean, my goodness, what I would give to have that kind of conversation. You know what I'm saying? Just sit down and say, Lord, where are we going?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or not even that. The Lord just comes down and says, hey, this is what you're going to do. It makes it so much more simple.
And he probably thought, no way he screws this up. Mm-hmm. Him and I just talked about it. I made it very clear.
Wrong. Okay. Abraham, or it's Abram at this
still
point.
Abram, right?
Yeah, Abram at this point is still human.
He is. That's a fact.
And so we're going to make a few mistakes before we get to that point. So we have the Lord's covenant with Abraham. Abram, excuse me, and basically he's just saying that he's going to bless him, and then he's also going to bless his children that come after him. Of course, Abram's like, you haven't given me any children. How are you going to do this? And then the word of the Lord came to him and said, "It's just don't worry about it. It will happen, and I'm making a covenant with you."
Well, and one thing, because it's going to come into play later. Verse 3, and Abram said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. But then God corrects that, because not what he's trying to tell you, Abram. He says, then the word of the Lord came to him, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. And that's going to come into play here soon.
And then right after that, that's where that famous part comes in where he says, look up at the sky, count the stars, if you indeed can count them. And we know that's impossible.
You cannot.
Yeah. Then he said, so shall be your offspring, which to me is a pretty amazing promise. And it's true. That is what happens. I mean, Abram is going to become the father of the Hebrew nation.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. And so forth and so on. And so he makes the covenant, and we move on. Okay? So he just told Abraham.
We just talked about it.
We just talked about this, okay? And this is where this is where we understand that once again, the people in the Bible are just humans too, and they make mistakes.
I also wonder, little preface here. I also wonder how much did Abram share any of this with Sarai at the time? Maybe he should have read her in.
You should have told
Maybe.
her. I don't
Maybe.
know.
It makes you wonder.
But part of me says is that when your wife comes and presents this to you, granted it was something we were reading here in the commentaries that did happen in that
It was a
culture
normal
at that
thing.
time.
Yeah, it was somewhat
very
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't say no. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
when you go back to the garden with Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Yep.
God told both of them,
Uh-huh.
and Adam's like, "Sure, I'll eat it too."
Yeah. It's true.
So I mean,
That's true. And Abram literally...
Yeah.
That's why I hinted on those two verses so much. It's like, God's like, no, not an heir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your flesh and blood. And I guess in Abram's mind, it's like, I guess this technically counts.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is my flesh and blood.
I mean, I guess.
But I think...
But he said. I mean, he literally said right here.
Not an heir.
Yeah, it says, "You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir." That's
what
basically
Abram
happened.
said.
Yeah.
And then God said, no.
Nope.
Yeah. No.
Let
Flesh
me
and blood.
correct that.
Flesh and blood.
And apparently he still wasn't clear enough for
He's
Abram.
like, okay, so an heir.
So an heir, because that's what we're doing. No.
Yeah, still no.
Yeah. And so what do we do?
Which takes us into...
which we already see that Abraham has already made a couple of mistakes before this. I mean, the whole thing about lying about Sarah,
Yeah.
Egypt,
Yeah.
his sister. We
Still human.
Yeah.
Still human.
So we're about to make another big, and I would say this is a pretty big mistake.
This is a huge mistake.
Yes.
Becomes quite a thorn in the side of the Israel people.
For a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah.
Actually, probably for
Forever.
To
Forever.
this day.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so on and so on.
So Sarai, Abram's wife, comes in and says, I have borne him no children, but I have this Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. What does Abram do?
Sounds good.
Agreed to what Sarah said. All right.
Great call.
I wonder how long after the conversation with God that then this happened.
It would be interesting. It's like, did you just forget everything we just talked
Right.
about?
Like, was it like he went home that
I like
day?
to tell myself he woke up the next morning
and
and
maybe,
like, all right.
And maybe Michael is right. Maybe Abram was thinking it from the aspect of
This is still technically
is
my flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that was culturally accepted at that
Right.
time. So anyway, what of course happens? He sleeps with her.
Mm-hmm.
She conceives, and the bad part is that once she is pregnant, she begins to despise her mistress. Why? Because at that point, a woman's value was based upon how many
could have
kids.
children.
Yeah,
Right.
how many
Yeah.
kids she could have.
Yep.
And anyway, so Hagar starts to despise Sarah. And Sarah's like, okay, this was a bad idea.
I've made a mistake.
Yeah, goes to Abram and says, you got to send her away. Deal with it.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Take care of that.
You got to take care of this.
Handle that for me. Handle my light work.
And then it says Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled. But, excuse me, let's back up.
Yep.
Sarai blames it on Abram. I was wrong.
Yes.
It says, you're responsible for this, that I am suffering. I put my slaves in your arms, and now that she knows she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. And what does Abram says? Typical man.
Why?
Your slave is in your hands. Do with her what you think is best. Basically, I don't want to have anything to do
Yeah,
with
this
it.
is your problem.
Deal with it.
This was your idea.
Yeah. And I don't think Sarai does it right. She mistreats Hagar, so she fled. So she flees. What is interesting here, though, is that an angel Lord comes and finds Hagar, and you have to understand that she was pretty close to dying at this point.
Yeah, she was on the run.
Yep. And he said, "Where are you going?" She said, "I'm running from." She says, "I'm running from Sarai." Then the angel Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress, submit to her." And the angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." So the promise still carried over to Ishmael, even though he wasn't technically from Sarai. But to me, that's the same covenant that God made with Abram.
Yep.
So he was still going to keep his word.
Yeah, and he tells her what her son is going to look like. Or gives her the name. Obviously, you will name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. I'm not sure that's what you want to hear about your son. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a...
Bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, dang.
Oh. So, growing kids God's way is not going to help with this one, or
is the wild donkey of a man the way he looks? You know what I'm
gonna go with no on this one.
All right, he's just going to be a very stubborn person.
I'm thinking they meant in that sense.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, we have Abram and Sarai. Sarai is really the one that came up with the plan. Abram should have known better, because he just had a conversation with God.
Yeah.
And yet they still make this mistake. And it's interesting to me, though, that God takes the mistake and uses it, and he still passes the same promise that he would have passed on to Abram's child, onto Ishmael as well. Why? Because God does keep his promises.
Yeah.
And Ishmael was Abram's flesh and blood.
Right.
Whether he liked it or not, Sarai liked it or not, he was still a son of Abram.
Yep. I promised you this, so here we are.
Yep. So Hagar bore Abram a son. Abram gave him the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore him.
Still spry.
Yep. And then later on, once again, we have another covenant conversation that Abram has with God, and God says once again, "I'm going to make a nation out of you," basically, and
let's try this again.
Yes,
Abram.
and it says, at the end it says, "Then God said, yes, but your wife will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac."
God realized, listen, I gotta be like so clear with this guy.
I gotta spell it out for this guy.
I have got to be...
He screwed it up already.
Yep.
I have really got to break this down for him.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it Barney style here, buddy.
Yeah. And it says, "And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation."
Yeah.
But my covenant but my covenant I will establish with Isaac. So yes, Ishmael gets the same treatment, but the covenant will be secured through Isaac, which was God's original plan the entire time, until somebody decided.
I was going to say, I think that's the only plan God really wanted.
It gives him like a time frame. Whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
now, granted,
he had to really Barney style,
and maybe part of this, and I'm just speculating. Maybe this is why we have the second conversation. Is God's like, yo,
yeah,
I thought we had this conversation,
right,
dude.
Something got miscommunicated here.
You messed up. Now we're having this conversation again,
yeah.
And I'm going to be even more direct this time.
Right.
Now, like I said, that's not in the commentary. I don't see that anywhere here. That's just me speculating.
Right.
Okay.
It sure makes sense though.
Yeah. But it just seemed to flow that way. So, okay, we covered a lot of scripture there, really fast. All right, but the deal here is that at some point we have to learn to be patient. I mean that's the overarching theme here. Is God has a plan.
Don't force the issue.
And Abram was awesome enough to actually know what that plan was, because a lot of times I feel like we have to just try to figure out where God is working and jump in there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He had the plan laid out. Right in front of him.
Right in front of him. And that just goes to show you, listen, a lot of the time we wish we had the plan, we still screw it up.
Still mess
Absolutely.
it up.
It's like,
absolutely.
I hear you, God.
And God would be like, really?
But don't you think we should do it this way instead?
Yeah.
But at some point I do understand, because I am a father, okay? And I deal with these same things with my kids. I can lay the entire plan out to my kids, all right? And then 5 minutes later, they forget the whole plan.
Stick to the plan.
I mean, there's really no difference. You know what I'm saying? It's like my 9-year-old or me with God. It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's true.
But we need to find some patience. And we need to be able to look and say, okay, God's in control. We understand He's got a plan, and we need to follow that plan. Because when we jump ahead of Him or try to accomplish that plan for Him, because we're good at that too.
Yeah.
Let me step in here, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
You
God,
don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, God, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not moving fast enough. Let me fix it for you.
Let me do this.
And every time that happens, something always gets messed up. Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, and there are countless stories throughout the Bible where people jumped ahead of God, tried to fix it their own selves, and it never turned out. So you got to have patience. You got to wait. Okay?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You just got to. God's timing is perfect. And I think that's really the main key there. Is we have to understand that God's timing is perfect. Mm. And we also have to understand along with that God works outside our time.
Yes.
Time means nothing to him. He can see it all. Mm-hmm. At least from what I understand, he can see it all. Future, past, present, it all works as one. And it's going to be really interesting to see it from his perspective once we get there. How this idea of no time. But we have to be patient. We have to wait for him. And we have to understand that when it does happen, it's the perfect time for when it's supposed to be. And you're doing exactly what the Lord wants you to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
Don't get ahead of him. Don't get impatient. And don't think that you can fix it.
You can't.
Nope. But once again, we have a man in the Bible
said he could.
That is human just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except for this poor guy, it's written down in the Bible, so everybody gets to read it over and over again.
Everyone's like, "Oh, come on, Abraham."
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times we've read this story, and it always ends the same way. I don't get it. It's kind of like rewatching a movie.
Yeah.
It's like you hope for a different ending, but it still ends the same way.
Still the same.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.